Did you know what paradox means? The short way I can summarize it is when we go from statements that are true or seem to be true to a contradiction or something that defies common sense. Socratic ignorance paradoxically refers to a kind of knowledge. It is summed up by the well-known statement, "I know only one thing, that I know nothing." Paradoxically, Socratic ignorance is also called Socratic wisdom. Socrates was an ancient Greek philosopher. He was the beginning of the classical era of Greek philosophy and is considered the founder of Western philosophy and autonomous philosophical ethics. He taught by talking, leaving no written works or treatises behind. The Menon paradox, as pointed out by Plato, is if we know the solution to a problem, there is no problem. But if we do not know the solution, we do not know what we are looking for, and we cannot expect to find anything. Plato's answer in Meno says that remembering the world of ideas helps us to find the solution. Some thoughts on Plato. He was born in Athens around 427 BC or a few years later. According to Greek custom, Plato was probably first named Aristocles after his paternal grandfather, and later took the name Plato, which means broad-shouldered. For Plato, the founding of the academy was one of the most important events in the ancient world. The school stood a few kilometers from Athens. Plato taught philosophy and mathematics in dialogue form, and later also in coherent lectures. So important was mathematics to him that he is said to have inscribed on the entrance to the academy the inscription, "No one who does not know geometry may enter." Chuang Chou, the butterfly's dream. Once upon a time, Chuang Chou dreamed that he was a butterfly, a fluttering butterfly that felt free and happy and knew nothing about Chou. But suddenly he woke up and behold, it was him, the real Chou. Now I don't know whether it was Chou who dreamed that he was a butterfly or whether it was the butterfly who dreamed that he was Chou, but there must be a difference between Chou and the butterfly. This is what I call the transformation of things. Chuang Chou then does not believe that reality is dreamlike, but that there is no more reason to regard the world we experience when we are awake as real than the world we dream. The duality of waking dreaming can be analogized to the duality of life and death, which is also eliminated in the Chuang Chou. A preference for either state is not possible from the point of view of the Chuang Chou, if only because it is precisely their constant alternation, their continual transformation into one another, that constitutes one of the essential elements of reality. Chuang Chou was a contemporary of King Shuang, 319-301 BC. He was interested in Taoist religion and philosophy. The ship of Theseus, also known as the Theseus paradox, is a philosophical question to which there are several equally valid but contradictory answers. This paradox was first posed by the ancient Greek philosophers, starting from an extract from the myth of Theseus. The question is one of self-identity. Does an object lose or retain its identity, even after most or all of its constituent elements or parts have been replaced? Theseus is one of the greatest heroes of the ancient Greeks, king of Athens. Zeno's paradoxes are the paradoxes that Zeno of Elea invented to support Parmenides' theory that the image formed by the senses is misleading, and more specifically, that motion is an illusion and does not really exist. Imagine Achilles, the fastest Greek, racing a turtle. Being so fast, he generously gives the reptile a 100-foot head start. No sooner does the race start than Achilles is a few jumps away from where the turtle started. In the meantime, however, the turtle has also made some progress, perhaps a foot. Achilles takes another step to get there, but in the meantime, the tortoise has moved a little again and is still in the lead. No matter how fast Achilles gets to where the tortoise was a moment before, he will always be a little ahead. Zeno's argument seems to prove that Achilles will never overtake or even catch up with the tortoise. We now know that the sum of infinitely many numbers can give a finite result. In the case of the paradox, if we add up the infinitely many tiny slices of time that each step takes, we get a finite amount of time, exactly the amount of time that Achilles needs to catch up with the turtle. If you give him more time than that, he will, of course, overtake you. The arrow some people question this solution on philosophical grounds, saying that for an infinite number of numbers or an infinite number of tiny slices of time, the addition would have to go on for an infinite time, so that we would never reach the goal. And adding more time to infinity, according to this view, is inherently absurd, since infinity contains all possibilities and cannot be added to or subtracted from. This view is represented by the so-called Neo-Zenonians. Here we have to imagine a flying arrow. At any moment in time, the arrow is at a known point in the air. If this moment has no temporal extent, then the arrow has no time to move and must therefore be at rest. By a similar logic, it can be seen that it is at rest in subsequent moments. Since this can be verified at any moment in time, the arrow cannot be moving at all. Its motion is an illusion. Zeno thus claims that motion is an illusion, that it does not really exist, and that it is therefore meaningless to speak of speed or its limit. According to the resolution, merely because an arrow appears to stand still at a frozen moment, we cannot say that it is not really moving, since rest can only be understood as a time delay. In order to check the stillness of the arrow, several different moments have to be considered. And in these moments, the arrow is obviously in different places and therefore moving. For a more accurate analysis, differential calculus should be used again. In this way, we can establish an exact relationship between the different positions of the arrow in time and its velocity using the limit calculation. The fact that the length of the selected time slice approaches zero does not necessarily mean that the ratio of the distance traveled to the elapsed time, the velocity, also approaches zero. In reality, it converges to a finite non-zero value. This value is the speed of the arrow at the time instant being measured. Timeline. Time travel is the scientific theory that it is possible to travel not only in space, but also in time. This leads to various paradoxes. See, for example, the time paradox, which researchers of the theory try to eliminate, and opponents of the theory cite as evidence. The time paradox or time travel paradox is a paradox related to time travel. It first appeared in the science fiction writer René Barjavel's 1943 book, Le Voyageur Imprudent. The paradox, spoken in the second person, goes like this. Suppose you traveled back in time and killed your biological grandfather before he met your grandmother. As a result, one of your parents was never conceived, and so neither were you. So you could not ultimately travel back in time to kill your grandfather, and so on. An equivalent paradox in philosophy, autoinfanticide, i.e., going back in time and killing oneself as a child, first appeared in an essay by Paul Horich. Autoinfanticide is considered by many to be impossible, as is time travel, because if I tried to kill myself in the past, something would surely prevent me from doing so. The time paradox is often used as an argument to prove the impossibility of time travel. However, attempts have been made to resolve the paradox. Stephen Hawking says there is a solution to the time paradox. According to the consistent history hypothesis, no one can go back to the past unless history has already shown that they have arrived in the past, killed their grandfather during their stay, and done nothing to contradict the current situation. So he would not be able to change written history. A spectacular example of this hypothesis was shown to the general public in the film The Final Countdown. There is another way to solve the time paradox, namely the hypothesis of alternative histories. In this hypothesis, time travelers enter an alternative past, different from recorded history. Therefore, whatever they can do will have no effect on their own present. The other way round, returning to the past creates a new timeline, i.e., history is changed. As a consequence, the time traveler cannot return to his or her own present, but can only move along the given, newly created timeline. This theory also relies on the results of quantum physics, see below. Since there is no longer determinism at the atomic level, but only probabilities, see Schrödinger's cat experiment, each fixed probability creates a new universe. Hence, the number of universes is infinite. In the case of time travel, a new universe branches off, is created, and the time traveler moves in it. Of course, these theories are just theories. We have no evidence of time travel. We have not met any time travelers. But they have been an inexhaustible subject for science fiction writers since H.G. Wells.